Seminoles.
If you're going to have an academic discussion, possibly Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, among Power 5 athletic programs, the athletics logo could go in another direction. Football in particular, maybe Notre Dame, Alabama, Ohio State. But you put it all together, and it's difficult to rival the Michigan brand academically, athletically, institutionally across the globe. So we will talk Michigan football, the brand, the value to the Big Ten, and of course, how the USC UCLA factor impacts Michigan football. We're here at the Voice of College Football, Wolverines live for a 43rd time. We appreciate everybody being here. Leave the comments, questions there in the live chat. Of course, Dre Artis is here, as he always is, to talk up Michigan football, one of our post-game hosts here at the Voice of College Football, and becoming a familiar face. I think he's on more than I am at this point.
Oh,
we got Tony Altimore, consultant strategist, provides just amazing research into big-time college athletics. Tony, how you doing?
good. How are you guys?
Good.
Well,
We talked about it a minute just for our folks knowing. I am a Michigan native, so I feel very at home. Like all my friends from high school went to U of M, and so I always grew up there. In fact, my first ever game at the Big House was the Michigan Florida State game, and what a place it was. So we always had fun growing up, going to Michigan State games. And my dad was actually I told them this, but my dad was actually Coach Carr's recruiting host in high school. So he's a good friend of our families, and always grew up loving the maize and blue. Even though I'm a Trojan, I cheer for the Spartans and the Wolverines as well.
So before we get into today's topic and recruiting fans and recruiting nerds, we will address recruiting and the recent news involving the Wolverines later in the show. Certainly want to pay homage to and remember the passing of Gary Moeller, Michigan coach from 1990 through 94, 5 seasons with the Wolverines. Gary Moeller passed away this week. Michigan great. Certainly 3 Big Ten championships, a short stint in 5 seasons, but took the Wolverines to 2 Rose Bowls. And again, the 3 Big Ten championships, 4-1 in bowl play. And you see the outstanding record at 44-13 for the Maize and Blue. Dre, anything on Gary Moeller's impact on Michigan football?
you know, I think he was an example of continually. His tenure at Michigan was it's a snapshot of the quote unquote glory days of Michigan and typical. What was a typical season at University of Michigan? Averaging about 9 wins a year, somewhere around that number. Getting to the Big Ten, winning Big Ten championships. So I mean, I think one thing that's very, very evident, and you've heard this from a lot of people who had the chance to meet him, play under him, or coach with him, was that he was a really good guy. Very well respected. I know I've seen a lot of people in the media who covered him, who all, were very, very respectful in their remarks on the day of his passing. So that kind of just shows you how he was viewed and respected, not only as a coach, but as a person. And, I think from that standpoint, just like when Bo passed, it's a blow to the University of Michigan family for sure.
Absolutely. Life is precious. Fortunately, he was able to live a long one, but still it goes by quickly. So Gary Moeller, rest in peace. Michigan head coach from 1990 through 94. Again, 3 Rose Bowl appearances and 3 Big Ten championships. Gary Moeller passed away this week. Tony, let's transition to your role in all of this, which has been timely in the last few weeks with the addition of USC and UCLA to the Big Ten and the changing landscape of college football in general. And I am intrigued, especially since we had you on the Ohio State show earlier today, to hear your take on. There you go, Dre. to hear your take on Michigan's athletic prowess merged with its academic standing, which is certainly to be honored.
Well, Dre, we're going to talk in a minute about what I think the Big Ten now has, what I call the fearsome foursome. We've got two pairs of two fun rivals that are going to add a lot of excitement. So I guess first we'll start. One of the things that I've done that has been really of interest to a lot of the Voice of College Football folks is a fan base study. So I took the three kind of famous New York Times studies and the 538 study on the size of college football fan bases, and did a lot of stuff to adjust them, control for them, mixed in a lot of stuff from Gallup and census data and a lot of other things to really try to get a gap on where how big each individual team's fan bases were, and did a lot of stuff to test it and sync it up, particularly with the Gallup data, to make sure it was coming out pretty well, and it did. And we got, I think, probably the best overall kind of analysis of numbers to actually kind of compare fan base size of institutions. And Michigan, of course, one of the leading ones. So, Mark, if you want to put up the screenshot. So, interestingly, college football is a very, very consolidated market, and Michigan is one of the huge national brands. So, for example, Michigan's one of the biggest brands in New York City, for example. New York City, Chicago, LA. Michigan fans are everywhere, not just in Michigan. So you guys are actually the fifth largest fan base, and if you about 65% of the US considers themselves college football fans. Of course, you know, you can define that however you want, but with kind of looking at that, we ended up coming up with the fact that Michigan has about between 6 and 7 million fans, which is a lot. And you guys are, like I said, you're actually fifth. The Big Ten, because the Big Ten is such a marketing power, such great schools, so much success, so much exposure, the Big Ten actually has a number of the biggest ones. So Ohio State's number 1, Penn State's number 4, you guys are number 5, and then you head down, you get Wisconsin, USC, like not far behind. So Michigan has an enormous reach and people following Michigan everywhere you go. Taking that, looking at it from a conference standpoint, the Big Ten is just about even with the SEC, which one of the things that we see, for example, is in the Big Ten, you have a lot more population, but it's population that doesn't follow football as closely. In the SEC, you have a lot smaller population, actually not nearly as good of markets, but they do tend to follow the sport much more rapidly. And so, you know, from that end, I think you can make it clear that like the Big Ten markets are definitely more valuable. And in fact, if you actually look at from a marketing standpoint of who you want to market to, the Big Ten markets are in the most valuable cities. So it's no shock that the Big Ten TV contracts are looking to be as ridiculous as they are. Looking at it from a per school basis, here you go, just in the Big Ten. You guys can see there, Michigan third in the Big Ten, followed by Wisconsin, USC, Michigan State, Nebraska, Iowa, UCLA, Maryland. In these numbers, I've tried to include the new schools because they're on the team. And they fit in very, very well in the Big Ten. So from that end, you certainly see Michigan is very high, very highly ranked. Let me just quick skip to this is one of the things I think is very interesting too, is we think about what I now am calling the fearsome foursome, which is that Michigan and Ohio State, of course, have been, lockstep of the huge, super successful programs in the Big Ten. And USC and UCLA are also, hugely successful what they've done over time. So this chart here just kind of takes a look at Heisman Trophy wins, overall national championships, Olympic medals, college football national championships, Final Four appearances, and College World Series appearances. And it really shows like the Big Ten has now locked itself in, I think, it's pretty hard to get anybody else that would be even close to this in a lot of these. Certainly UCLA, North Carolina are the dominant basketball programs of history. So you've bought that in. USC is the dominant baseball program of history. Olympic medals, USC and UCLA and Stanford dominate that. NCAA national championships, Michigan has 37. USC is 111 and UCLA is 119. So, they're bringing in enormous things that fit very well with the schools. We use Mark's national championship rankings in this. Michigan's a little bit sketchy depending on how much you want to count from the 20s in this. But you're looking at USC at 11, Ohio State at 9, Michigan at 5, UCLA at 1. They gave a Maryland game away from a second one. And then Heisman Trophy wins. USC and Ohio State both have 7. Michigan has the 2. UCLA has 1. So you're looking at 2 schools, I think, that fit in really well with our other 2 sort of current Big Ten powers, which is pretty cool. But of course, the Big Ten and then Rose Bowl games is where it gets awesome. So the Rose Bowl now, retroactively, I like to think of it as 46 times it has been the Big Ten championship game. USC's got 25 wins, Michigan's got 8, Ohio State's got 8. Those numbers should be boosted up a little. Actually, all 3 of them should be boosted up a little bit, because in this modern era, you don't always go to the Rose Bowl. So I should probably do like a retroactive Rose Bowl calculation. But as a Rose Bowl fan, I left it as it is. And so you now have taken of the schools that have been there the most. You now have all just an enormous amount of them are all Big Ten, which is kind of cool. So the Rose Bowl is now officially not only a Big Ten location, but a Big Ten property. One of the other things that's really interesting, the Big Ten, of course, you guys know this, is not just about sports. In fact, sports are small dollars. The joke is the B in Big Ten stands for billions, not the millions that go with sports. And interestingly, there are only 12 schools that are in both the top 50 academic and the top 50 football programs, using the CFN 5-year study that they did about 20 different factors or something all combined into one, scored them and did a point ranking to create the top 50 football programs. Only 12 institutions are on both of those lists. 5 of them are in the Big Ten. Not surprisingly, it's you guys, Northwestern and Wisconsin, along with your new ads, USC and UCLA. In the SEC, you've got 3, Texas, Florida, Georgia, and then in the ACC, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Miami, and then Stanford left in the Pac-12, thanks to Cal's ineptness. What I think is really interesting here, thinking about the realignment rumors. So when we look at rankings of schools, a lot of it gets screwed up. People get fussy about rankings. So I actually took the academic rankings. I took the most common academic rankings, averaged them, and then showed just the A5, the power conferences. And when we do that, the Big Ten has 4 of the top 10. So Northwestern is number 3, USC is number 5, and UCLA and Michigan are tied along with Notre Dame for number 6. And when we think about all the current realignment rumors, what I love about the Big Ten is, you hear the Big Ten realignment rumors of Stanford, Notre Dame, and North Carolina. I mean, that would give you guys 8 of the top 10. I should say us, I guess, now. Instead, it's not you guys, it's for the Big Ten. And we can talk a little bit more about this, but I would not count Stanford out to somehow join the party before this is all over in, a couple of years or maybe. But, you certainly see that Northwestern, like I said, amazing academic institution. Michigan, amazing academic institution. You guys have added in right in there. USC, UCLA are with you right along with Notre Dame, immediately followed by Cal and North Carolina. Of course, the rest of the Big Ten is no slouch either, and you see the Big Ten all throughout the rest. And here we go, top 10 to 20, you all of a sudden show up with, Illinois and Purdue and Wisconsin. Then you get everybody else. By the time you get to the top 40, of the 16 members of the Big Ten, 14 of them are in the top 40 of the power conferences. So, the Big Ten is just on another level. And you guys know about this with the Big Ten Academic Alliance, which is where the universities are integrating together. They're purchasing, which is dwarfs the money in sports by a long shot. Your IT development, all of your libraries and information systems, your IT development, your computer cybersecurity system, that is all jointly run through the Big Ten. The recruiting of professors back and forth is all integrated within the Big Ten. And so for the Big Ten, when the Big Ten's looking to make an addition, they're not just looking at football. They're not just looking at academics. Like, is this an institution that we want to integrate into ours? And for schools that are looking to join the Big Ten, this is why nobody leaves the Big Ten, is because when you're in the Big Ten, you're locked into the Big Ten in the billions, not in the millions. It's your whole institution. And so one of the things that's really exciting is that, for USC and UCLA is they're saying, okay, we want to be integrated into Michigan and Wisconsin and Northwestern and Illinois and Ohio State. And I think that that's a great thing. So this is a heat map that takes a look at the Big Ten. We added in Notre Dame because of, day to day, we never know what the rumors are. And it looks, so from green to red, green is the best in the conference, red is the lowest in the conference. And you can see here, Michigan is the most green of everyone on the chart. You have the highest combination of academics and athletics. Ohio State's been a little better in the last decade or so football wise, but Michigan is just such a this amazing institution. I joke with folks. We're talking with the Ohio State folks. You guys in Ohio State, if you want to lean slightly on the academic side, you guys are clearly the best. If you want to lean slightly on the football side, they've had a great decade. But you guys are certainly on top of the world. And I love it because sandwiched right in between you are your new ads at SC and UCLA, which is pretty cool. Yeah. And so you take a look at this. So these are looking at institutions the way that presidents tend to look at them. So we've got here 3 sort of sections. We've got institutional resources, academics, finances. We've got the market and the marketing appeal. And then we've got athletics and football. And that looks at, your football, your basketball, and then your Olympic sports. You guys see that. You guys are pretty much green the whole way down. USC, very similar. UCLA, very similar, a little weaker at football. Notre Dame, strong, very strong academically, a little weaker in a lot of the other sports. Northwestern, the best academically of them all, a little weaker in all the sports, in the fan bases and stuff. And you get Wisconsin. But the thing is in the Power 5, there are no crappy schools. In the Big Ten, there are no schools that are not elite. Like even Nebraska. I mean, Nebraska is a great school. And Nebraska is like a sea of red over there, and as is Rutgers. And Rutgers is also a great school. So the Big Ten, you are just really in elite company academically. And Michigan is the top dog in that. And then real quickly also for you guys. So one of the things that I think is interesting, I think if you said to most Big Ten presidents 2.5 weeks ago, hey, would you be willing to, a decade from now, would you be willing to forego $3 or $4 million of revenue to have the institution completely integrated into Cal and Stanford and Washington? Like they would say, where do we write the check right now? In fact, if you think about the addition of, I don't like to think about it this way because it, for my Trojan's sake, but if you think about the addition of USC and UCLA, you could probably add Cal and Stanford and Washington, and like the economics would come out a wash for the whole conference, based on sort of some of the numbers that I'm seeing. And I mean, if you take a look at where those schools are as well, should they be something that the Big Ten wanted to go forward with, Stanford would be the most elite school in the conference. Cal and Washington also, not far behind. They all sort of just looking at from a heat map standpoint, they're all beating Wisconsin. So it's really just you guys, Ohio State, Northwestern, and the Pac-12. The Pac-12, one of the interesting things is you always had a very bifurcated conference of 5 academic elite schools and a couple in the middle, and then some more very good schools, but just a little further down. I mean, Stanford is I can't stand them, right? Like, I mean, the tree and the band, like I want to just like vomit, but as Trojans, we have to sit there and take whatever grief they're going to give us. It's usually deserved. Anyway. But at the same time, like, I mean, there's no better school in the country. Like it would be a phenomenal addition to the conference as well. And I mean, Stanford has won, I think, 28 of the last 30 Directors Cups for all around sports performance.
That's crazy.
I think it's 28 of 30. I think Texas won the last 2. Stanford had won like 25 or 28 in a row before that.
I'm sure you've got a healthy lead in football, though, a series lead.
yeah, exactly. And their football team has been abysmal lately, which is nice. But, it's also another Big Ten school. Washington, I can't think of a school outside the Big Ten that is more Big Ten than Washington. I say this as a native Michigander. Like Washington is a Big Ten school in Seattle in a stunning, like beautiful Gothic campus sandwiched between two lakes with cherry blossoms that put DC to shame. And that big old stadium at Washington is absolutely like it is better than a Big Ten stadium. I mean, it's right there on the lake. They created the term sailgating on the water there. It would really be a great addition. The football team has stunk lately. It's time for them to stop that. But you guys would love the Huskies. And then Cal has just been abysmal in football, but when they get it rolling, I mean, that is just it is just another outstanding institution that fits very well within the Big Ten. And then I don't know if we have that. If we want to take a look at that. Oh, this is the other thing. Values. So the Pac-12 schools and the Big Ten schools have always been very aligned on values, and things like sustainability, which is a huge issue right now, diversity, which is a huge issue. The Big Ten has its United as one campaign that does diversity. This is just looking at last month. So the Big Ten, they did all their stuff for Pride. Every Pac-10 or Pac-12 school did their whole big Pride month. They light up Royce Hall, all rainbowy. Diversity also matters in leadership. So one of the things I've found, interestingly enough, and you guys understand this, is funny enough, female CEOs on average kick the snot out of male CEOs in terms of how their football teams do. So I joke, I say it's because they know how to throw like a boss by finding the right person for that. So these are the female CEOs of I call it the Power Six because I threw in the Ivy League, along with her quarterback. But when we think about this, I call it the new queens of college football. This changed today with Dr. Stan Ono becoming the new president of Michigan. So you guys go from a queen to a king. Although certainly President Coleman's president emeritus and has done a great job with the school both times she ran it. But the Big Ten has always valued diversity. The Big Ten is back to 50-50. So the Big Ten leads the Power Five in terms of number of female CEOs at 50-50. You guys were the Pac-12 was second. And funny enough, I think 3 of them, including the new Wisconsin chancellor, were actually hired directly from UCLA. So UCLA Chancellor Gene Block's been there for like 30 years or something, 20 some years. But a bunch of his high-ranking female, deans and stuff like that have quickly become university CEOs on their own. Like I said, including Wisconsin. So this is just very much a place that these schools are aligned in and fit together. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. Are there any? I don't know if there's any. If you guys have any questions or stuff in the chat we want to hit on real quick. We also have kind of an introduction. We can introduce you to the Big Ten's new class.
I'm not shocked that Michigan is like number one in this particular chart because we all know of the prestige of the Michigan as the academics, right? One of the best medical hospitals in the country. Is at University of Michigan. I know the Ross School of Business is one of the highest ranked business schools, in the country. So, but it's incredible to see the combination of athletics and academics together, and it does help to strengthen the argument that some people have, which is that we don't have to always get so caught up with on the field results. We're bigger than that. We're making impacts off the field as well. Okay, we run into those type of counter arguments when the football team in particular is not performing to the level that some of us want them to perform at. And Michigan is one of those rare schools where you really can have both, and you kind of expect both. Right? You expect, if you're a fan of Michigan, you want your child to go to the University of Michigan, most likely. And also, you feel pretty good about your chances of winning every Saturday. So,
I'll tell you a funny thing about that, actually. Lincoln Riley has been talking about how much easier it is to recruit to USC because when you tell the parents, okay, hey, by the way, if he doesn't go to the NFL, he's going to a top 20 college overall. And he said it's a lot easier to recruit parents to USC than it is to Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
In addition to the sunshine in football.
Absolutely.
And same thing with you guys.
Mhm. Absolutely. And you showed the chart earlier about, the top, the largest fan bases in the country. And, it makes a huge deal where, you go into a kid's, living room, a parent's living room, and you just you can wear your hat or your shirt, and they automatically recognize the logo without even hearing the name. That's huge. That all matters. And and it's one of those selling points, like you said, where it's like, look, the chances of your son, we going to do everything we can to have your son or daughter, based on the sport, reach the highest they can in this particular profession. But if they're not able to, here are the numbers. Our numbers and our reputation speak for themselves in terms of our academics and the doors that we can open for them, whatever career field they choose to go into. And so, like, it really is eye opening. Not only for Michigan, but also the new additions such as USC, UCLA. Especially a lot of us here in the Midwest, we don't really know that. Like the true impact that those schools have outside of just like, quite frankly, some of the athletic prowess that they've had at a certain point in time. Like me personally, when I think of USC, I think of, Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart. I think of Pete Carroll, right? And look, from the context of college football and his impact, O.J. Simpson. I'm just saying, like, you think about those things, but UCLA, I know Troy Aikman played there. So it's like you think about those things, but you don't really consider the academic impact they have as well.
Well, and I'll tell you too. I mean, one of the things that's amazing, and UCLA is famous for, is USC as well. Like the work that they've done in diversity in sports is unbelievable. I mean, UCLA had Jackie Robinson played 2 sports for UCLA. Arthur Ashe was on their tennis team. I mean, it's just like all across the sport. The stuff they've done in the LGBT sports world is fantastic. I mean, just everywhere. Both schools have been very much leaders, just like Michigan and Michigan State and Ohio State. And it really is a really, really good fit. And for your folks, for you guys to know, for folks that are new, I just thought we'd give you a quick introduction here to your new class, kind of like Saved by the Bell, the new class of your folks coming, and kind of why they fit in with the Big Ten, why they fit in with Michigan and the brand and the programs. First of all, this is not the first time they've done this. So in 1957, they actually did exactly the same thing and sort of overthrew the conference and created their own new conference, which was the Pac-12. So anyone who tells you that the old Pacific Coast Conference had anything to do with the Pac-12, like, does not know what they're talking about. That's like saying that the Romanovs had something to do with the Soviet Union. Like, no, they're very much different, very, sort of a revolution. Funny enough, the LA Times used the same wording in the headlines, both 1957 and a week ago. Once they did that, though, they all went kind of on a roll. USC in 20 years won 5 national championships. UCLA had their 10 national championships in 12 years in basketball. USC did 10 College World Series titles in 20 years. And UCLA's won 24 national championships in men's volleyball in only 53 years. Like, just lunacy. We'll sort of skip through that. These are schools that compete with each other in everything from Oscars to Olympic medals to Grammys to whatever. But there's a Big Ten connection to these schools as well. So Martin Jarman, the UCLA athletic director, who was a key part of this, was one of Gene Smith's disciples at Ohio State. And I think he graduated from Michigan or worked at Michigan State for a long time and has a degree from there as well. The president of the University of California system is the former president of Ohio State. And the alumni who kind of runs their board is running the Olympic Committee. USC has ties as well. So Mike Bone, our athletic director, has a degree from Ohio State, was athletic director of Cincinnati, close friends with everybody in the Big Ten. Dr. Folt, the USC president, was actually a freshman at Ohio State before she decided she wanted to get into marine biology and went out to San Diego or Santa Barbara. The boards that really ran this are some of the smartest people in the world. So we've got, Casey Wasserman from running the U.S. Olympic Committee, president and CEO of Wasserman, also sort of from a famous Hollywood executive family. And then on the USC side, running it, on our board, interestingly enough, you had Suzanne Nora Johnson, former vice chair of Goldman Sachs, Rick Caruso, the real estate billionaire who's going to be the next mayor, and George Lucas. So I mean, these are the types of folks that were helping make this decision. This was not just a sports decision. One of the really cool things for Michigan and the Big Ten is the Olympic venues. So you guys are going to be playing in the midst of the Olympic venues as the Olympics are happening and the World Cup. So the Rose Bowl, you guys know it well. It's your West Coast home, but been renovated multiple times. And it's going to get renovated again, get cleaned up to be ready for the World Cup in 2 years, the Olympics in 4 years, in the Olympics in 2028. The Coliseum, some of you guys may not have been there or may have heard it was kind of old and dumpy, got a $400 million gutting renovation. It's awesome. It's going to host track for the Olympics, which is going to be crazy because it's going to be like the old Roman Coliseum. You can serve underneath it, which is cool. Pauley Pavilion, like the most haunting venue in college basketball, with due respect to North Carolina. Like this place, the ghosts of the past float through there, just like they do in the Big House. Also got like a spectacular brand new renovation. And USC recently built, I was actually on the committee, helped plan it when I was in school, recently built a beautiful new basketball arena. Funny enough, the baseball field at USC is going to be turned in temporarily into a swimming stadium. The diving pool is in the infield, and that little part that curves around the diving well, that's actually the current baseball stadium. So it's going to be pretty cool. Both schools are in downtown. People always ask about Lincoln Riley's house, so I just sort of gave you a view. This is why you might move to LA, be a football coach. USC is right downtown for folks who haven't been there. Beautiful campus. Quick looks at it. They just did a $700 million. There's a picture of it here. New addition to the campus. This is the football building. It's being expanded, the John McKay Center. One downside about USC and UCLA, kind of like Northwestern, but to worse, is that space is so constrained. I mean, they're in the city that it's hard. You got to do, you don't just like, it's Oregon can just start bulldozing empty trees tomorrow. USC has to start planning, like it's on a 20-year plan. So they're working on stuff right now for the football building. UCLA actually has a very similarly beautiful campus. This is Royce Hall. You'll always see it whenever you see anything from UCLA. I'm going to poison UCLA in your minds, though, right now, for anybody who is a little bit OCD. Those stupid towers don't match. One has 3 windows, one has 2 windows.
Yeah.
Oh, so, I would have missed that. Yeah,
if you're a little OCD, UCLA is now poisoned in your mind. You're welcome. UCLA also just opened their new Wasserman Football Center. This picture doesn't do it justice. It is huge. It is beautiful. The bottom levels, this massive weight room that opens up into the California sunshine. The whole wall just opens. It's got these huge balconies. I mean, it looks just like the huge new like Jazz at Lincoln Center performance space they just built. It's pretty stunning. So needless to say, these are two schools. They're very, very much kind of Big Ten schools. UCLA, I hate them, but they are the #1 rated public institution right now in the country. And they are the most applied to school in America. USC certainly, actually, in some academic areas, beats them in ranking. As a private USC is a private school, very kind of medium-sized private school, similar to Northwestern, but right in the heart of downtown. So both very, very sort of beautiful Big Ten-y campuses that I think you guys are going to love when you all come to visit. And I think they fit in with the Big Ten and add to the Big Ten. And certainly, when we look at the data, sorry guys, I'm just flicking back to the chart there. When you look at the data, they fit in with the Big Ten. And I think here, like I said, you guys, if they were to add, and I'll tell you, I mean, I know their football team just stinks. I told the Ohio State people, if I were the Big Ten, I would say to Stanford and Cal, like, hey, you guys are the greatest institutions in the country. I mean, you guys understand science at Michigan. I don't know if you know this. Cal literally has elements named after the school. If you look at the periodic table, berkelium and californium are literally named after Berkeley in California. On the bottom of the periodic table, it's got two whole rows. They added those 2 rows because the scientists at Berkeley discovered too many elements. They had to reorganize the periodic table. 10 of them they had that have come directly from Berkeley. They discovered plutonium. They ran the entire Manhattan Project and all of U.S. nuclear and foreign policy in like the 60s and 70s. So, I mean, I hate them, but they are like a pretty outstanding place if they could get their football team in order would be pretty great. They also have both Stanford and Cal have stunningly beautiful campuses, much like Washington. So, I don't know. This is why the Pac-12 and the Big Ten have always been in lockstep. They're very similar institutions. They act alike, they think alike, they are alike. Their people went to school at each other. Dr. Johnson from Ohio State has 3 degrees from Stanford. She did all of her grad work at Colorado, or big research work at Colorado, where she invented whatever the technology is for the screens that we're all looking at right now. And you just see that all over, folks that they went to Michigan, they went to Ohio State, they went to UCLA, they went to Cal, they went to Stanford, they went to Wisconsin. Among the administrations of all these schools are very interrelated. And, you think it'd be great for the conference if we keep that together, but you certainly see, where the decision was made from an athletic standpoint. Michigan is on top. And I think that it's pretty cool. We've got 2 more institutions now that help Michigan, populate that area along with Ohio State.
Absolutely.
Tony,
You gonna say something, Mark? Go ahead. Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. There's probably more that we could get into, certainly, but we're running out of time. And
you guys got to talk about recruiting.
We need to get into.
We got to keep that column green with some football wins.
Oh, well, that's the goal. That's the goal. But we'll see. That's how the way things have been trending lately. The future got some questions. We can, but that's the goal.
It'll be good. I'll tell you. It's gonna be quite fun to see Big Blue come running through the Coliseum.
Yeah. I think back the last time I believe Michigan had their biggest Pac-12 matchup in the regular season. Probably was Harbaugh's first year where we went out to play Utah, and it was Harbaugh's first game, and it was actually a really good game. And I gotta admit, it was a pretty cool, atmosphere. I think it was a 3:30 kick. I want to say no, maybe even later. I think it was 7:00 kick Eastern time, but 3:30 actually out in Utah, and or something like that, 4:00, whatever it was. And I was very, very surprised with how I enjoyed that, and I can definitely look forward to seeing Michigan go out there and competing against USC, Harbaugh versus Lincoln Riley. Those headlines it's gonna be fun and crazy.
I'll tell you one last funny thing, just real quick. One of my best friends from high school, Chris Quick, and you guys, huge Michigan fan, helped build the Phi-Sci chapter there. Great guy, devout Michigan fan. And we used to go to the Rose Bowl. So we went in '97 when Michigan won the national championship. We went in 2003 in the USC Michigan game for the national championship. And the next Michigan game, when USC and Michigan played under Pete Carroll, he wasn't there, and we were winning pretty solidly. And I was like, I thought to myself, Chris is gonna be mad. Well, in the 4th quarter, he calls me on a cell phone in the middle of the stadium. I said, hello, and and I thought I was gonna be miffed. He just says, our fans there this time are rookies. And I said, oh, what do you mean? He says, well, the only thing worse than watching your team lose in the Rose Bowl is listening to them lose while you're blocked in on the golf course. And I laughed. He's like, nice game, hung up.
Yeah.
And I laughed. But whenever I would go on, like I said, I've been to these Rose Bowls with Michigan and USC, and it's 2 fan bases that get along really well and have fun together. So I think it's going to be a really cool combination.
Yeah.
Tony Altimore, I'm going to go to recruiting. At TJ Altimore, please get on over there to follow him on Twitter, and you will have access to a lot of this information. You can hit him up there on Twitter and engage with Tony right there if you have more questions and more comments to make.
If you guys want those slides, they're actually on. You can use the link on my Twitter right now and download them and pour through the data yourselves. There's also a ton of financial data in there you guys might find interesting.
Tony, get your war chant practice on. Work on that over the next 10 minutes or so, and we will see you in a few.
A little bit.
Thanks,
Tony. Take it easy.
All right. Good stuff. Hopefully Dre is still with us. There we go.
Yep. I'm still here.
Still with us. So that's interesting to look through all that, because it's not all just about football. When we're talking about all this realignment and conference expansion, there are boards of regents and administrators and university presidents looking at so much more than football.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening. I mean, that was incredibly eye-opening because I remember when the news leaked that the Big Ten was adding UCLA and USC. I'm like, wow. I mean, USC, wow, that kind of makes sense. I thought purely from a football standpoint, USC that makes sense. You know, you have Lincoln Riley going out there, uh, the West Coast, huge brand like USC. Um, but UCLA, I'm like, God, they don't really have any much of a pedigree football wise, and like I didn't really consider basketball because when it comes to your exposure, your program, your university, football has always been king. It's not really basketball. I knew the history of um, Coach Woody out there, Wooden, excuse me, out there in UCLA, a famous basketball coach. But so that was very eye opening to see, kind of all the aspects that these university presidents are taking into account when they're doing those acquisitions. So, definitely, we thank Tony for the information, and I will be following up on his Twitter feed to look at more of that data because it was interesting.
All right, folks, Michigan Live. We're here every Wednesday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. Lock it in. Be back here next Wednesday, and we will talk Michigan football. So recruiting, 11 hard commits, big addition today. I don't want to mess up this name. Is it Enow Etta, the defensive lineman out of Texas?
Etta, yeah, out of Texas. He picked Michigan. Looks like over MSU was part of his final list as well. That's another nice addition for, let's be honest, a recruiting class thus far for Harbaugh has been underwhelming. And it's interesting, Mark, when you see how certain fans look at recruiting, right? You have a certain segment of fans who are just worried Saturday to Saturday about how the team is looking. They're not thinking 2 years down the line, which is a lot of times where that you see the true impact of a recruiting class, and you have a lot of fans that will say stuff like, "Well, oh my God, look at our team coming back this year. We have a weak schedule, which we really do. We essentially only have maybe 3 or 4 games tops, in which going in, we know we have to bring our A game to make sure we come out on top. Maybe even 2 games that you have to bring your A game to win. So Michigan should at least have 10 wins this year. So look, we're going well. We just won a Big Ten. The program is in a good, a healthy place. However, recruiting and the lack thereof, it's like a speeding train that is coming from behind you. You can only outrun it for so long. And when it finally hits, when the impact truly shows itself, it's not like a slow pain. Like a train, it actually knocks you over, runs you over, because you see that huge talent drop off. And we saw a lot of that with, MSU and Mark Antonio. I mean, why do you think, Mel Tucker was dipping into the transfer portal so much? Why did he overturn the Michigan State roster? So, why did he attempt to do that so quickly? It's because of the lack of recruiting success that Mark Antonio had. And, and it's one of those things where, yeah, Michigan may have a really good season this year, but what happens when JJ goes to the NFL or he leaves or, he moves on? Dalvin Edwards, Ronnie Bell, you have to constantly be replacing these kids. And you can't just have 1 or 2. You have to have multiple 4 stars, maybe get a couple 5 stars here and there. And while at the same time, cultivating and finding hidden gems of kids who are 2 or 3 stars and finding out ways to help expand their game and help them elevate, right? If you hope to maintain your level of play, which is to be a Big Ten contender every year to win it, and maybe a CFP contender as well. Me personally, I felt after a magical season last year, finally getting past Ohio State, getting that Big Ten title, get into the college football playoff, and then having your doors blown off, the reality smacking you in the face, seeing Georgia that this was a transitional year potentially, that maybe we could have kind of rode that momentum, used that exposure that we had in a CFP, maybe get a couple 5 stars to commit, and try to take that next step, right? What's going to happen all in one off season? We all know that, and it still can happen. But I would say the momentum just doesn't feel there. Doesn't feel as high as I thought it would have. And I don't know if that's, how much of Harbaugh's experimentation with trying to go to the NFL has to do with that. I'm sure it didn't help, but it's definitely something that Michigan fans need to continue to monitor.
So I was on with Steve Dace, just on Tuesday, but we had a different topic. So it must have been last week's show. And he was red hot about Michigan's recruiting ranking, and not just the recruiting ranking. I understand his point was, and I came to the same conclusion, that in July, with National Signing Day coming up in December, it's less about the recruiting ranking and more about, okay, every time Michigan loses a recruiting battle, let's say they're going head to head with Notre Dame, they lose that one. They go head to head with Michigan State, they lose that one. They go head to head with a combination of Notre Dame, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State, or whomever. They lose another one. That's another guy off the board. That's another guy that they were that close to getting, supposedly, and he's off the board. And the odds of these players decommitting from Notre Dame is pretty minuscule. They're probably lost. They're gone. And so that just narrows the field of guys that Michigan is going to be in the running for to make this the kind of class that Michigan fans are used to, which is usually 8 to 12 in the country, something in that range.
Top 15.
Top 15 in the country. It was 53 last week. It's up to 36 with some of the recent additions. So that's a nice jump. Yeah. But Steve Dace's issue was with NIL. He doesn't think that Michigan's fighting the NIL battle the way that they should. I was going to say under the rules, but there are no rules. Basically, just not just letting it all loose and trying to pursue players the way everybody else is.
Yeah. Well, I think, and that's why I believe the addition, I could say his name wrong, but Santa Ono, the new president for the University of Michigan. I mean, he's, apparently is he's huge into academics as well as athletics, which is huge. You need the backing of, there was no, it was a lot of smoke about, Schlissel not being a big fan of Harbaugh during his time at Michigan and not really having athletics as a huge priority. And so it's huge to have a school president that does value athletics, right? And so we'll see, what kind of impact he potentially has on Michigan's expansion to NIL. Of course, it's not his direct field, but if the school president wants you to take certain actions, you're going to probably do it. So I'm with Steve in terms of NIL and the Michigan's lack thereof of really utilizing it, because I feel like you have to make a decision. Do you want to be a pretender or you want to be a contender? Do you want to pretend that you're part of the, let's say, top 12, top 15 programs in the country, or do you want to actually do it? And I believe the way the NIL is trending, if you want to do that, you have to jump in, feet first, full in. You can't dip. You have to go, because these other schools, our contemporaries, aren't doing that. And you're not saying it's an end-all be-all for getting or losing a kid. I mean, apparently Dante Moore just wanted to go to Oregon. That happens. But I will say, from a local standpoint, losing out on two highly touted quarterbacks in a state like Michigan, where we're just not flooding with, a lot of five-star talent like the state of Texas or Florida or California. When we have these local kids here, it hurts that much more. especially at the quarterback position if we're not able to get one of them. Is it in the world? Of course not. But it does matter. And, somehow, Michigan has to find a way to, of course, being at 36 is not going to do it. They have to find a way to finish in the top 15. And that's just to maintain where they've been, And look, my goals for this program are the same. You will never convince me, and if anything, Tony's data helped strengthen that, is that this program has to settle with just being good, solid. No, you have the brand recognition, you have the financial backing, you have the academic respect to be an elite football program. And that's just it. And anything else, I think Michigan fans are settling for.
Dre, as always, we appreciate you making this happen. Folks, we got to run. We got Florida State over on the Florida State channel starting like immediately. So appreciate you being here. Next Wednesday, folks, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Bring some friends with you. Let's chat it up. We'll have Des. We'll have Dre. We'll talk Michigan football with all of you next Wednesday at 5. Dre, I appreciate it. You have a great rest of your weekend.
Take care.